Thank you so much, Allison. Thank you for holding the space. An amazing, important topic to be discussed. A little bit about myself. I am Abdurrahman Akhiari. I go in the United States by Waji Gay Lion. I am the first openly gay man from Saudi Arabia, a political dissident with asylum in the United States, an international human rights activist. I sit on the board of directors for Missourians for Alternative to the Death Penalty, and I am appointed to the Kansas City Healthcare Commission Housing Committee. Um, in 2016, when I first came out, I was under direct threat of being kidnapped by the Saudi government. And that threat did not go away. Till today, I was granted political asylum in 2018. And today, I'm standing right before you receiving death threats on a daily basis by the Saudi government and its followers. Yes, the same year I applied for asylum in the United States and went to a safe house. There was another gentleman from Saudi Arabia who also was trying to apply for asylum in Kansas City. And the only difference between my situation and his situation was that I was in a safe house and he wasn't. We don't know anything about that gentleman anymore. He's back in Saudi Arabia and he was kidnapped and taken care of by his family and the Saudi regime. The Saudi government does its best efforts to track us, target our families, even though that we may not have any relationship with I have the worst relationship with my family because I'm openly gay, and yet I receive news that my family is banned from leaving the country. Why? Because their son is the first openly gay man from Saudi Arabia. We have political prisoners that are in prison just because of their sexual orientation or sexual identity, even though they're not out yet. Saudi Arabia is trying to sell itself as an international spot for tourism, where we have seen just past Ramadan four very, very well known porn stars from Spain went to the historic spot in Jeddah and no one said anything to them. But yet, if you are a Saudi citizen and anyone suspects you of being a member of the LGBT community or having any criticism to the Saudi government, there is no doubt that you will be thrown in jail. So Hel Yusuf Al Yahya is one of the greatest examples of that, where his family and the Saudi government took him all the way from California State University, where he was at California State University, Fullerton, studying his life, going to a university, and they were told him that his mother is dying, that he needs to go back. The first thing they did to him is that they threw him in prison, sentenced him to 3 years in prison and 800 lashes for appearing like women, public taste, online safety, and being a member of the LGBT community. That is happening on and on and on. Yet, we see deliberate efforts by the Saudi government reaching out to tourism industries, asking them to send their best of the best to cover Saudi Arabia as a whitewashing tool so they could say that we have better relations with the West. Now, the sentencing of Salma, especially after the Biden administration leaving the kingdom and scoring their deal in lowering oil prices, shows up that the West is not ready to put human rights first, and that they are certainly putting their self-interest and their economic standards and what they expect out of the world economy first before any human rights lives being put on the line. On the daily basis, they have taken the executions and the lashings out of the streets, and they just shove it inside the prisons, and that has not ended torture, nor it has ended sexual assault in Saudi prison, and it has not increased any visibility regarding public documents for anyone that's being imprisoned inside the kingdom. There is no documentation for Sahel Yusuf Al Yahya, as I wouldn't be surprised there aren't any documentations for Salma. Um, these sentences, we cannot follow up with them, and there are no ways for us to go in and make sure that the day of the sentencing is collaborated with when they're supposed to be released For example, Sahel Yusuf Al Yahya was sentenced in October of 2019 for 3 years. That means by this year of October, he should be released. We don't know if he's going to be released or not. And that is the case for many of them.
Yeah, thank you so much for raising that, Waji. And you know, of course, we have seen several cases where people have served out their whole sentence and have not been released promptly. We saw Ashraf Fayyad, who was finally released this week, but after having stayed, you know, longer than his sentence, and that also includes those who have served their travel ban sentences. Walid Fatahi is a name. He's served his full travel ban sentence and still can't leave. So I think you raise a good point when we talk about cases like Salma's. She's facing 70, you know, plus years. She'll be an old woman even by the time the sentence. I mean, if she even lives to be over 100 years old by the time the sentence is completed, and then we still wouldn't even know if she's would be a free woman at that point. I want to remind folks who have just joined, we've just passed through the halfway mark. We've been discussing the case of Salma al-Shehab, a young PhD student at the University of Leeds who is sentenced to 34 years in prison with a 34-year travel ban in Saudi Arabia, simply for using Twitter to freely express her support for women's rights, for Palestinian rights, and for human rights online. We are welcoming interventions from the audience and certainly encourage folks to speak up. Let us know what Salma's case means to you. We do have a request from somebody who I don't know your name. I just see you here as Bot, but I will go ahead and approve you to speak. If you have something that you'd like to share, you should be able to speak now. Okay, and maybe, oh, there we go. The floor is yours. I think you may still have to unmute yourself in order to participate. In the meantime, Lena, do you have something that you'd like to add while we're waiting to see if Bot is able to unmute?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think what's also really important in this discussion is to, you know, how to save her and the other prisoners of conscience. The thing is, Saudi Arabia cares about its image. Otherwise, they wouldn't be spending millions on their PR. So, you know, even a tweet helps. And I'm just going to say something is that I've seen it with my sister. The Saudi government is, at least MBS, is fragile. And we shouldn't think that, you know, they're unstoppable or that, you know, we're so small and vulnerable and we cannot do anything about it. You know, even if someone just tweets, you will see all the trolls attacking you because they know that this will bring change. So really, I encourage everyone who cares about this issue to tweet about her, to ask, you know, whenever the Saudis are in the conversation, or, you know, your government has relations with Saudi, to ask about her and really insist and to be consistent really helps. I am sure, I mean, I am very hopeful that Salma will be released before the 34 years. But we have to keep pushing, and pressure works. Again, I will repeat it, but we've seen it times and times again.
Thank you, Lena. That's a great reminder. And I want to alert everybody to the fact that tomorrow will be Women's Equality Day around the world. And so we are asking folks to give special attention to Salma's case tomorrow. If you're able to tweet, share information about her. She was simply demanding equality for women, and that's why she's in prison. We'll also be hosting another Instagram Live tomorrow, a Q&A with Bethany El-Hydri, who's on our call today. So that we can answer more questions about the case. I see that Bot is here, and Dana, I see your hand raised, so we'll go to Bot first, and then we'll come back to you, Dana.
I have to use the voice transformer because I'm inside the kingdom of hell. You know, the Saudi government would never change at all as long as there is an international support for it, you know, and especially the United States. when the United States decides to change this abusive regime, it can do it. But as long as the Saudis are paying money to the CIA and a lot of missions abroad, they will never care about human lives, you know? It's all about the West, by the way. And the West just use the human rights as a measure to pressure the Saudis to pay more. This is how it works. You know, they will never change. And regarding Salma, inshallah, she will not stay 34 years because I don't think this regime will last 34 years. Thank you guys and have a good night.
Thank you so much for your courage in speaking out. We really value your participation.
You're welcome.
And thank you so much for the reminder that for us here in the West, who have the luxury of being able to pressure our governments, and who have the privilege of being able to demand more from our governments, that we need to do that. We need to ensure that their commitment to human rights doesn't begin and end with words on paper, doesn't begin and end with speeches, but that they actually put their money where their mouth is. Thank you so much.
Exactly. Imagine in Saudi Arabia, if you speak against the royal family, they will destroy you and destroy your family life. It's like crazy, oppressive regime, just like ISIS, you know? Only one view. You cannot oppose, whether you're with us or we will kill you mentally or physically, you know? This is how they do it. It's like an ISIS regime, you know, just like Al Qaeda, you know, whether you're with me or I will kill you. Take care, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Dana, over to you.
Okay, thank you. I just want to add to what Lena said. We should bring back biocoding culture. We should definitely bring it back. If any business or any big movie star or big biocode them, biocode their movies. We have the power to make an impact. I personally don't watch movies for some stars. I don't want to, want to name them right now, but they accepted the money that Saudi Arabia gave him to whitewash their reputation. We have the power. We need to do more biocoding. I personally think that would work if we keep doing that. As there's something else I wanted to add after Salma's sentencing. It's a very, very traumatizing experience for every Saudi, not only activists, by the way. There is a general idea that all Saudi women who live abroad are seeking asylum, either politically or, humanitarian asylum. But that is not true. I know of women who are pursuing a career, or already have a career, and already have a family here, kids, and they are afraid, and they're not even politically active in social media or even offline, and they are afraid to go visit their family in Saudi Arabia. They are afraid. Like, can you imagine how insane is that? They would, if they want to visit their family, they would just meet him in a third country. Like, if they're in America, they will meet him in Europe. And it's just insane that we got to this point. They don't even want to go to the consulate. It breaks my heart that this is the reputation of my country, of my government. They don't want to even go to the Saudi consulate to get some paperwork done, like renewing a passport, or a power of attorney or whatever. They even don't want to go there. They're like, we're super scared, we're super afraid, we cannot do it. And this is the situation right now. It's just insane.
Thanks, Dana, for that reminder of what life is like, even for everyday Saudis abroad, even for those who are not speaking up vocally on behalf of human rights, that it can still be a nightmare. Lena, I'll turn things over to you, and I want to apologize that I neglected to mention that you'll also be joining us tomorrow for the Instagram Live. So tomorrow, if folks are available, we'd love to hear from you again. Lena, floor is yours.
Thank you. And yes, I'll be there tomorrow. Thank you, Dana, for that. I'll just comment on Dana's point about whitewashing of the culture industry. I might maybe give a nuance here. I have been talking to Saudi artists who are actually, they enjoy new freedoms or new rights or new changes, I would say. And this is true, and we should not neglect that. The thing is, everything depends on MBS. So this liberalization is only a cover up of what is happening inside the country. So for me, boycotting might not be the solution, because then we are giving a double punishment to the Saudis inside who want actually, to enjoy concerts and to enjoy new cultural rights. What I can say is that when Western stars go to Saudi Arabia, they know they have this platform and they will be used whether they like it or not. They often say that they're not politicians, and then they go there for the people who love them, and they have fans there, which is true. But they have to understand that they will be used. They will be utilized as a PR for MBS, because everything is under MBS's industries. So, because they have this platform, whether they go there and speak up, and if they realize that they cannot speak, then they know what the situation is, and then they should be public about why they refuse. Because boycotting just for the sake of boycotting and not having any pressure, it doesn't really bring any change. So I call on anyone who's invited to perform in Saudi to accept, but to speak on what they hear, including Salma's sentencing. Ask about Salma. If you're in a concert, at the end, just say, and I ask, this country to release Salma. I wish, she could have attended this concert or whatever event it is. And if they cannot do it, or if they have consequences afterwards, they should speak, and this will bring change. Because I do not believe that boycotting only is a solution. That's just a point I have.
Thanks so much both to Dana and Lena for raising this important dynamic, which is what the entertainment, sports, and even private sector might be able to do. As we know, they have just as much power, sometimes even more than our own governments. And so therefore also a responsibility to speak out, and also for reminding us that while we may not vote for them, we do in some ways vote for them by contributing our money to them. So this is a really important dynamic, and obviously one that MBS knows very well. We have about just under 15 minutes left. Again, if we have other interventions from audience members, if you'd like to share what Selma's sentence meant to you when you heard about it, what you think that the human rights situation in Saudi means to you, and what might be done about it outside the kingdom, we'd love to hear from you. I do want to touch on something that's come up a few times throughout the conversation, and that has to do with the gendered nature of whether it's online harassment or the types of stereotypes that Saudi women face abroad. All of our speakers, Bethany, Lena, and Dana, have faced some sort of gender-based violence, whether that's actual physical violence or harassment. Bethany, did you want to speak a little bit to, I know Lena covered earlier what the situation is for women's rights, but some of the gender dynamics of these issues of repression are.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think in the context of Selma, there's multiple angles where her identity, she's from Al Asa, like a small town in the eastern province. She's from the Shia minority in Saudi Arabia. She's a woman. And I think that those all contributed to probably the regime thinking that she was a pretty simple target. She doesn't have any family that's living outside of Saudi Arabia. And I do think that that's something that we've seen in the uptick in these long jail sentences and in the profile of who's being taken in and detained. I think the regime has gotten a little bit more savvy, though they're still sloppy, about who they're detaining now, and whether or not they have people who are living outside of the kingdom, and if they come from powerful families, etc. So who we're seeing is a lot younger women who are in their early 20s that are being detained. A lot of them for actually retweeting hashtags that have been created. I think El Qost started Stand with Saudi Heroes. That was actually a hashtag that was mentioned in Selma's charge sheet. And I think that solidarity with even some of the hashtags saying that salaries were high and taxation without representation was a problem. So simple things are what people are being pulled in and detained for. And that's not to say that it doesn't impact everybody. It absolutely does. But I do think that this new wave doesn't fit the typical profile that we've seen in the past. And again, being a woman makes it more difficult. Being Shia makes it more difficult. And she should have been a success story for the kingdom. She's in her final year of her PhD. She's a mother, a great mother of two, and she was adopting a girl in Saudi Arabia, which is, if you know the dynamics of how difficult it is to adopt and how rare it is to adopt, you know that this is somebody who really cares. So yeah, I just think it's important to remember how she should have been a success story for the kingdom, and even her dissertation was working towards helping people in Saudi Arabia. So it's just insane that she's been criminalized, and I'll let others speak.
Thanks so much, Bethany. Lena, did you want to add to that?
Yes, thank you so much, Bethany. Yeah, just regarding the online harassment, I think platforms have a responsibility. What we see is that, and I know some of the women here, can testify as well, is that when there are feminist accounts, they are taken down in seconds when trolls complain or report them. But then when we report some of the harassment we get, it never gets deleted. So there's a real issue on platforms, and they should actually speak to civil society and invite us to negotiations and discussions, instead of just ignoring us and always responding to the Saudis' requests to take down some of the accounts.
Yeah, thank you so much for raising that. I have Dana, and then I have Waji.
Thanks, Alison. So that is actually true what Lena just said about the reporting thing. So I was doxxed by Saudi government trolls, meaning they put my address where I live. Unfortunately, they know where I live right now. So they posted my address, bullied me, like whatever. They just posted my address. I reported it to Twitter. I reported it to Twitter so many times. The account is still there. The tweet is still there. And Twitter responded to me that they see no issue with this tweet. And it just crazy and insane that this is the response I got. The response I got. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks so much for sharing that. And of course, the irony is not lost on me that we're hosting this on Twitter, but I know that this has been an issue for a while in terms of moderation and protection of human rights defenders online. Wajid, did you have something to add?
Yes, I have 2 points, and I'll make them quick. First of all, they're both um, follow-ups with Donna's regarding Twitter. There has been an effort, and I've been working very closely with Twitter engineers for a minute now. And since the attempted purchase of Twitter, there's a lot of changes and a lot of people were laid off. In addition, a lot of I've worked with an investigative journalist that specializes in cybersecurity and social media, and when he tried to confront Twitter regarding their issues of protection and human rights violations, and a couple of the other issues regarding our safety, especially people from Saudi Arabia, they have directed these journalists to their office in Dubai. Now, the interesting thing about that is that when you have a lawsuit that they just lost, and we know the Saudi that was indicted, that was a spy working for Twitter. We know that Twitter is kind of not wanting to get in any more legal troubles. So I think that they're directing all of their offices that deal with Arabic Twitter accounts to Dubai, which is leading to more human rights violations. That's on one hand. That's the first point that I would like to discuss. The second point is that Donna really hit it close to home to me, especially as someone that's granted political asylum in the United States. We simply demand more. The United States has been very generous in giving us protection by staying in the United States, but the United States also promised us protection, and they need to deliver on that. I've reached out to the FBI department and Homeland Security several times regarding the death sentences and the harassments that we're receiving here in the United States. And if there are no efforts from them to protect us, then we have a really big issue. I am more than happy to work with whomever that needs to work with, but we need to be protected. Our work needs to be protected. We came to this country so we could have our freedom of speech and could demand a difference of the world that we live in. And if that's not working, then we need to change that, whether it's by going to the legislators or whether it's going to the U.S. administration. We simply cannot live in fear for being who we are. And if we were granted asylum, that means that is the responsibility of the United States to protect us. Enough is enough. We've had enough Saudis abroad getting executed and killed for no reason other than them telling the truth.
Yeah, thank you so much, Waji. And this is something that, we talk a lot about at the Freedom Initiative, this issue of transnational repression, needing particularly dedicated and intergovernmental attention, because it's both a domestic issue. It has to do with the protection of those who are here in the US on US soil. And it's also an international issue. It's a foreign policy issue because it has to do, as we've been discussing, with the emboldenedness of authoritarian regimes abroad. So I thank you for raising that. We have Jihad, and then we have Stephen, who have requested to speak. Jihad, over to you.
Hello, good morning. In the past few years, we have seen a complete isolation for MBS as a result of the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. And the last thing that MBS thought of was traveling outside Saudi Arabia, especially to the US and the other European countries. But after Biden's visit to Riyadh, we noticed MBS became more comfortable. We watched him visiting Greece and then France. Also, he was planning to visit some other North African countries. And who knows, maybe we will see him here in America soon. After Biden's visit, we also saw the release of some of the detained princes who are considered among the first class princes, such as Faisal bin Abdul Aziz, one of the sons of the late King Abdullah bin Abdul Aziz. Um, we are here as Saudis who live in the States, demanding an answer about the internal agreement between Biden's administration and MBS. Is he trying to give immunity and appoint MBS as a king and jeopardizing the lives of Saudi people? Just to keep the interest of America, regardless of the brutal behavior of MBS. And Salma's situation is the best example for that. I'm here just questioning and trying to find answers. Uh, I don't know. I hope you guys can help us to raise our voices and do more pressure on the administration here and try to stop this as soon as possible. I'm done speaking. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jihad. You're raising really important questions, and I think questions that we would all love answers to, and that we will keep pressing on. Stephen, over to you. Would love to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity of speaking. Looking at the people that are on the call today, I may be wrong, but I think I'm probably one of the few non-Arab participants, which kind of raises a question. Somebody who's got an interest in human rights across the world, but particularly in the Middle East, which is perhaps where some of my experiences mostly lie in life. I'm just wondering, it's great to see initiatives like yours and Lena's and others popping up But I don't get a sense that there's a huge number of activists in the West, from kind of my kind of Western European background, who are getting on board and becoming organisers and helping to support. Is my perception correct, or am I just not seeing the bigger picture? I wonder if you could fill that in. And if I am correct, what, if anything, is being done to kind of grow a kind of grassroots of supporters who are willing to spend their time and put the effort in to provide the support to help people in Saudi?
Allison, may I have a shot at that?
Sure.
So I think there's two parts to this. So one part is that the activism from the Saudi uh, uh, people is kind of new. It's the last 30 years that we have been kind of active. Also, grassroots organizing from Saudis is very rare. So one of the biggest struggles that I've seen is that you'll see Saudi activists come out and join the movement and start demanding change, but they have little interactions with the people that are grassroots organizers on the ground. So you'll definitely see them work together with the feminist movement because they're very tightly correlated. But outside the feminist movement from Saudi Arabia, there is very little interaction with grassroots organizers from abroad. And I think that's one of the biggest weaknesses that the Saudi opposition or the Saudi human rights activists have when they come outside the kingdom, is that they have little experience in grassroots organizing and they have little experience with grassroots organizers. So I think those are our biggest two obstacles that we are having because of that issue.
Can I come back at that for a second? Because as somebody who's obviously interested in issues in Israel and Palestine, you will all know probably on this call that there's a huge number of European-based, I guess indigenous, for want of a better word, citizens who are highly supportive of the Palestinian issues. Now, I know that's kind of obviously historically received a lot more prominence. However, as long as I've been conscious, as even going back to a young person, I've always been aware of the human rights abuses in Saudi Arabia. I mean, they're on the media relatively frequently. So I'm kind of wondering if one possibility is, is it worth, or has people reached out to those activists involved, for example, whether it's BDS or whether it's kind of pro-Palestinian activism, because there will be natural allies out there. And I just wonder if anybody amongst, whether it's Saudi or other Middle Eastern human rights advocates for the respective countries, whether they've attempted to reach out and see if they find people who are interested in working with them and supporting them.
Stephen, I'll provide a very brief answer to that. I'm keeping my eye on the time and I want to then turn it over to speakers for last words. I do think that if I'm being honest, I mean, as somebody who is active in the Palestinian solidarity, there's been a lot of disillusionment also with the success of that movement to actually affect change on the ground. And so I also think that we've seen a lot of activity that's happened around, say, traditional advocacy here in the U.S. that's targeting policymakers who, frankly, are the focus has been more on pressure at the sort of top down level. I do think that we've seen, and particularly we saw this with Jamal Khashoggi, and I think the response to Selma's case, even in the past week, has shown there is more appetite for a greater grassroots movement. I just think that there may be some rethinking of what's the best way to encourage this type of grassroots mobilization, to activate, as what Waji mentioned, the diaspora communities who are abroad. And I also think, frankly, that foreign and authoritarian governments have gotten a bit smarter about how they anticipate and, as all of the speakers have mentioned, target those who do become a bit more active. So I think there's a lot of work and a lot of lessons that remain to be learned from the movement for Palestinian solidarity, and I think there is still a ways to go, as you mentioned, when it comes to solidarity with Saudi Arabian human rights defenders. But I do think that this is something that's on the mind of human rights activists that are working on Middle East issues. I do want to, again, mindful of the time here, and I do want to turn things over to Lena, Bethany, and Donna for last words. I'll also remind folks that we will be talking more about Selma's case tomorrow on Instagram. Would love to see you again, or sharing with your friends. Would love to see messages of support for Selma, for her family, her kids. Tomorrow is Women's Equality Day. Really appreciate everybody here. I'll start with Dana. Dana, do you have any last words for the audience?
Yes, thank you. When I sought asylum in the United States, the first reason was, you know, seeking freedom of speech, because I do believe this country have their First Amendment, which is freedom of speech. The thing is, the Western people or the European and the American needs to know that it's not going to stop in the Middle East, like fighting or oppressing freedom of speech. And Saudi Arabia have long arms and have unlimited wealth, and they will fight anyone or any organization who dare to speak or criticize them. And I do really believe that right now they will be using what I would call proxy lawsuit, abuse litigation, to go after whomever dares to criticize. And it's just, this needs to stop. And we need to talk more about it, because, yes, right now they're only targeting Saudis abroad, but maybe in the future it will be also American citizens or European citizens who dare to speak. Thank you.
Well, Bethany, I think that's a pretty seamless transition over to you.
I definitely agree with your assessment, and am concerned about lawfare from the Saudi government, especially like suspicions of it happening via third parties. And hopefully we'll be working on addressing that with Congress and getting some legislation out eventually. But for now, in summary, I just wanted to say a reminder to everybody: Salma Shehab is a mother of two. She was meant to adopt someone, a little girl, in Saudi Arabia in the upcoming months. She's somebody who cared about human rights and who continually reminded her audience, though it was small at the time, not to forget the political prisoners and those who are wrongfully detained. So I just want to remind everybody not to forget Salma, and that she never thought this would happen to her. She did not seek asylum in the UK. She was intending to go back and serve her country. And she had no sort of suspicion that this would happen, even when people had expressed to her, like, are you worried about going back? She said, I don't even have any followers. If I had a lot, it would be that. But now we know that anything can happen. Please don't give up on her. She is such a loving and caring person who gave her all to everybody around her. And she really needs the global community right now. Her family needs that support, because they're not going to be able to do it themselves, I'm sure. So please just continue to raise her case and do whatever you can to make sure that she doesn't disappear and that she's not forgotten.
Thank you, Bethany. And Lena, we'll close it out with you. Did you have any last remarks for our audience?
Yes, thank you very much. I might conclude by answering Stephen's question. I think it's important to note that we are in a new phase, in the first phase of a new era in Saudi Arabia. So there is fear. People don't really know how to react to this repression. And, with also families put on travel bans, families being targeted, collective punishments. But we see that the wall of fear is crumbling. The more we speak, the more this wall is going to fall. So I think, and we've seen it, the fact that there is no transparency, that the people are scared. Of course, people cannot be supportive or cannot hear about what is going on. But when it does come out, we've seen it with Khashoggi, we've seen it with my sister, and now we see it with Selma. When people hear about these stories, they do act, and they are supportive. So I think there is global support to the Saudis inside, to against repression, and we should continue to speak out. We should continue to support the people inside, and please really don't underestimate the power your words have. MBS has wealth, he has power, he has connections, but words and articles and pieces in the media and just tweets, they do change things. And again, I just encourage everyone to speak and not to underestimate themselves.
Wonderful words of encouragement in a very discouraging subject matter. But thank you, Lena. We do have power. We are better together. We can make change. We've heard today several different ways how. Again, encourage everybody to share Salma's story, speak out against injustice. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll see you at the next Twitter Spaces.